Welcome to Grade A Fun Now.
Alright, so let's talk about some design stuff, some color stuff, but mostly how we could flip these palettes so we could get multiple color variations. Boom. Let's do it. Alright, so I took this picture reference of this shrub because I was like, I want to see how I can translate this from real life into design, right? And that's at the essence of being an effective artist in general, right? It's studying from life and seeing how you can modify, change that, manipulate it, play around with shape, size, scale, like the variation between small, medium, large, and how you manipulate that. So, to be honest though, if we're really being honest, like nature is probably a better designer than any designer. Okay. What I decided to do was say, hey, because I like to cartoon things, I need to think about how much high level detail versus simplification. So there's a lot of big broad shape and then like tiny little leaves, but the emphasis is constantly thinking about the variation between small, medium, large, and deciding on when design wise everything becomes too similar. So I just went in and started scaling stuff, which is the beauty of working with vectors, right? We could do the same thing with pixels, but it feels like with pixels you end up with a lot more challenges in terms of, keeping things from getting completely lost to where the pixels just obliterate themselves. But I mean, it's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. But the idea is to think about, am I effectively thinking about variation in scale, right? So that's at the beginning of this. Is I just wanted to make sure that it's pretty clear that to be effective with anything that you really do, that it's going to start with looking at the real version of the thing that you're trying to design for all intents and purposes, right? So I wanted to add some silhouette of some branches behind the branches in the front because there was some in the reference, but I also just wanted to manipulate the negative positive space and just add a bit of depth. And then after a while I just kept noodling with the differences in the proportion. So when it comes to cleaning things up, because I'm working in Harmony, usually what I'll do is I'll copy my Scribble Scrabble sketch, which is sometimes not Scribble Scrabble, and then I'll put it in the color layer of that same layer, right? Because I know that I'm going to delete the color layer and then I'm going to actually put like solid color on it. But what it does is it keeps the file more organized, and I feel like I have less layers. And keeping in mind too that the way Harmony works is that for every layer that you're making, and even every frame that you're making, that it actually makes a file for that on your computer. So I mean, mentally it feels for me like I'm saving data, but I'm probably not. So after I clean up, and I usually use either blue or red, just because mentally I'll know that that's either my sketch or my cleanup. And so if I'm going through layers, I won't have to guess, did I clean that up or is this still a sketch? And that's just a specific preference thing. You can develop your own preferences later. So now I'm just creating swatches in the palette, and I'm sampling from the picture reference. And the only reason I sample from the picture reference is so that I don't make up the super generic version of what these colors should be. And I'm basing it off of the real colors that exist in real life, right? Because sometimes we have like standard ideas of what a color of something is, instead of looking at the reality of what it is. So that's quick and easy to sample from that, and mentally it'll save you time from having to sit and think a long time. So I made a separate layer for the ground, because what I want to do is I want to create a radial gradient so that it looks, the color's more dense, closer to the base, and then it gradually has a transition where it fades out. And I have plenty of videos where I show you how to do that. You could just go back through the previous videos. And if you just don't feel like going through the previous videos and you're like, hey man, make me a video so I can see how to do that, man, I'll do that. And then I just make a color card because I didn't feel like painting a background. And I just wanted to focus on just this one little tree so I could demonstrate this idea and this concept really quick and fast. If for whatever reason you just want to skip past all of the drawing part and get to the magic, you can skip a lot of this stuff. But I think, you know, the process, the procedure, you can always kind of pick up something, right? So one thing I always do is that after I'm done with cleaning things up, I'll take that same swatch that I use the red for the line work, and then I just rename it line work, and I just change the color of it. It makes it super fast to be able to change the color of your line work without having to like manually select and change the color of stuff. And then I usually make those little value spheres just mentally so I can think about like, hey, where's my light source coming from? Because it's easy to forget, like in the process of scrabbling of just really trying to figure out how to make stuff feel like it has volume, is that you lose sight of it and you could just start slathering value all over the place. This is very likely that I probably could have put shadows on the left side, but I thought, you know what, the volume of it feels pretty nice, so I'll just make it like the light is primarily higher up to save mental time space and just to keep the volume like nice and plump. I don't know if plump is the right word. Is plump the right word? But it feels full. Yeah, that sounds smart. And then just thinking about, hey, shadow is going to be on the left side for the most part. So then I know where like shadows are going to cast, and I know where effectively light is eventually going to be, right? So it'll mentally save me time from having to really spend an excessive amount of time thinking about like, how am I going to handle the value, right? And that's often a challenge when you're dealing with trying to give stuff shape and volume and structure, is spending a lot of time trying to figure out like, what am I going to do with this value? And in the picture reference, like the actual lighting wasn't great, but I just like the shape design of it. So I was like, ooh, let me see if I could do a version of that in Harmony. And then again, if you guys like the idea of translating like real world things into like stylized cartoony things, like hit me in the comments. I'll do more of these, you know what I'm saying? But then the shading style, if you guys haven't seen the previous videos of using like the tone shader, man, come on, go watch the previous videos. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I love about Harmony is the node connections. Like, you can remove and connect nodes to do like a lot of things, right? So that's all this is. The shading for this is that I just pick a color. It doesn't even matter what color I pick, because the color I pick doesn't even define what the light or the shadow is going to be, right? All it's doing is determining that the light or the shadow is going to be in this area, right? So I can just slather it all over the place. I can put it wherever I want. I don't even have to stay inside the lines, which I love about the tone and highlight shader, right? So I just drew in, hey, this is where I think I want my light is. And I didn't really like the light patterns, the light shapes. So I decided, you know what, let me go back in there and group that up a little better. The grouping on that feels nice, right? So that's the awesome thing, right? And then if I decide for whatever reason, like I just don't like that, right, I could disconnect the node, make another layer, and it's really non-destructive, which is amazing, right? And then I said I want some reflected light, and again, the beauty of the palette and the color system in Harmony is I can draw in all of what I'm doing with the reflected light, whatever color I want, and then I can just tweak it, right? And so I put this on a separate layer so that if I want to turn it off and on, I can. and then adjust the opacity of it so it's not super heavy and that's a little lighter, which is again really awesome. And then if I wanted to, I could have connected a blending node to play with the blending of it, but I was like, I just want to adjust the opacity of it. And then I wanted to add in some like really bright highlights, because like everybody likes highlights, right? Like highlights they're I don't want to make it sound weird, but everybody knows that highlights are sexy. You know, I don't know, I had some instructor that said that, and it stuck with me like forever, that they were like, you know what you need some highlights, because highlights are sexy. And I was like, wow, okay, all right. So to make something feel like you've put the icing on the cake, you just need to find somewhere to put a highlight. Bam. Highlight. Bam. Highlight. Bam. Anyway, the node structure is fairly simple. In terms of the thinking, you always go from art to your node, and then everything kind of flows from there until you get to where it all gets composited together and then effectively gets written to the screen, right? So the awesome part now, this palette swap, this is fast. This is fast, right? So all I'm doing is telling it to clone the palette, and then I go into the tint panel and I just slide the slider around. And it's like guessing almost, right? And then I just cloned it again, and I made another variation, and then I just slide the sliders around and say, like, I don't know what I want it to look like. I want it to look cooler. I want the color to be cool overall. Bam, I slide it to where it feels cool. Boom. And then I could cycle through those, right? And then if I wanted, I could actually like duplicate these trees and then just use the different palettes on the different trees and have different trees at different levels. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. And then I'm just gonna do some transitions in Premiere, so you see it fade in between all the different art. That's all it's about. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is real cool. Like, the palettes in Harmony are awesome. If you want a more detailed video and you want me to step through the nodes and you want me to step through the process, let me know. I got you. Where you at? Grade A Fun.